gravitate to the good. But what has it been? Get away from the bad. And you know, almost every strategy that you have in your life is focusing on what's bad to get away from. That's why it's so hard. When you've learned that that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be focusing on what we want, not what we don't want. But isn't it true? Isn't that the way the world is built? Isn't that the way every system is? That's why we have insurance. That's why we have, what are we focusing on in all these areas? What could happen? What bad could happen? See? Why do we call it preventative? We're not thinking about the good. We're thinking about what we're trying to prevent. So what I'm trying to get you to see is this is why you do it so natural and so consciously. Okay. But it's not you. It's just the wiring that you've been wired with in your brain. Then it says from 8 to 14 is a hero. It's when you're hero worshiping you. You pick someone to emulate. And it may be conscious or subconscious. When I look back, I realized it was my mother. And I imagine it was because my dad wasn't a dad to me, so I probably gravitated towards her. But when I knew that I had done that with my mother, I think I've told you this before, when I got married back in 81 or something, and we went through some little counseling thing, I remember them asking me about my mother, and write down the good and bad things about your mother. Guess what? No bad. Well, then I knew right away. Not right then, but it hit me later years. I thought, oh my gosh, that means I absorbed every belief, every value, because she was perfect to me. Regardless, I didn't filter. So we do that, and we gravitate from ages 7 or 8 to 14. Everybody does that. You may have more than one. But everyone then looks to someone to be like. Because do you know, you really just now become cognizant. From 0 to 7, you can't make cognizant decisions. It's impossible. You just don't do that. You don't think when you're those ages. Now that's part of your reality. Okay? Then from 15 to 21, you become social imprinting. That's when you have social imprinting. Then remember the teenage year, kind of the teenage years where you start trying to figure out, where do I fit socially? You know, what group do I want to be in? But do you know what? A lot of what you were from 0 to 7 and 8 to 14, though, is dictating that. Now here's the irony of the thing. After you're done doing all this, you've basically at 21 have created your current reality. And you have boundaries. And you are subconsciously, until you become consciously aware of it, 90% of the world is not living in conscious awareness. And you may not be either all the time. But most of the world is living in a subconscious automatic mode, unaware of why they're doing what they're doing, and thinking they're making free will choices. And they're not. They're all based on the wiring they've had from 0 to 21. Not on free choice. And they're not aware. They're not living in conscious awareness. Now, until you can separate yourself from who you think you are, and become aware of who you really are and detach, you're going to be in that automatic mode. And you're going to react instead of respond. And you're going to use all your subconscious modalities and all your subconscious strategies to maintain that safe boundary. And anything that comes to disturb it, you are the most creative person you can be. You'd be surprised how creative you can be to maintain that reality. And you know what else you'll fool yourself into believing? You will attract and confirm every belief you have and think, see? That's what I thought, just like I thought. That's the truth. When in reality, all you did was subconsciously filter out everything else. See, what you're doing is you're filtering out everything else that doesn't fit. And then all you see is what confirms what you believed in the first place. And then you think, see, that's living, but see, you're not living in awareness. You're caught up in that cybernetic loop of the created reality that you had from 0 to 21. Now, let's think about this though. What are we supposed to be keeping in mind the whole time I've been telling you? Who were you before you were? Pure energy. Now here's the other thing you may not, and this is, I believe this, you are also all-knowing and all-powerful and omnipresent. And you know what? None of that has changed. None of it has changed. The only thing that's changed is your awareness of it. All right. At some point, we've got to realize this. Everything that happened to you from your mother's womb to this point is a created concept. None of it is permanent. None of it is absolute. The only absolute is pure energy. Because what does pure energy do? What's pure energy do? Can't be destroyed or created, it only what? Changes form or transforms. So if you're transforming, is any of that form permanent? No. So how can it be permanent if its energy is constantly changing form? The only thing permanent is the energy. The only thing permanent is the conscious, intelligent energy that was there before the form. See? So, when you reach that point, then you realize there is no good or bad. There's only experience. And you choose. Actually, you define. Do you know the whole universe is neutral? Everything you're experiencing is neutral. You define what's bad and good. You define. And guess where you define from? Where do you think you got your definitions? From your imprinting. Right. And if everybody's definition is different, we do share some. We have some common definition. But if everybody's reality is different, then which one's the right one? None of them. It's just how we've defined it. It's how we've been defined, so we define. Does that make sense? It's like what I said last time. It's like this is the brain right here. This computer. The higher intelligence did what? Programming. Can this reprogram itself? So if you're not living in conscious awareness, you think you're the computer. And guess what? You're stuck. You're stuck with programming. You can't change the programming if you think you're the computer. That's impossible. The computer can't change itself. See? But when you can let go of all of this stuff, if you talk about setting you free, all the bad stuff is not permanent then, is it? No. Well, I'm sorry. If you define as permanent, guess what? But only because you defined it that way. This can really set you free here. This can really set you free. If you want higher enlightenment, as Bill Harris tried to get Angel to see, if you don't want to wait 10, 15 years, then you need to realize that all that you think you are in this body when you became your name, is simply a created concept. And none of it's permanent. And when I decide to take off this costume to put on another one, I didn't die. Now here's where we fall. Here's where we falter. If you're still holding on to this existence, here's where the pain comes in. Because if what I'm telling you, then you think, oh my gosh, if I'm not Travis and Travis dies, then when I leave, I'm not Travis anymore. Where did Travis go? See, that's the problem. That's what we're dealing with, is you're not seeing this lifetime as just an experience that comes and goes. We're trying to attach eternity to this created concept. That's the problem. It's also probably giving you a bunch of cognitive dissonance. I'm sure I'm throwing some chaos into your theory. Now, the thing is, this is what's causing all your pain and suffering. Your attachment to this duality body is what's causing all pain and suffering. Don't even have to name it. It's all of it. And do you know what? I can think of biblical examples. I even know a guy named, what was his name? He was a Bible teacher. And he was so detached that he decided when he was leaving here. And it wasn't because he was sick, he just was ready to take off his costume. His daughter tells the story. He was 85 years old. You remember me talking about this before? In his rocking chair. E.W. Kenyon was his name. E.W. Kenyon. And he said, one morning, he said, honey, I'm going home. She says, what? She thought he was getting senile. He was 85 years old. He said, what are you talking about, Daddy? You are home. He was sitting in his rocking chair. He says, no, I'm leaving. I've done all I want to do. I'm ready to go. He says, I'm leaving at 10 o'clock. Rocked in his chair after, and she says, fix my favorite breakfast. I want to eat breakfast for a day. One for the road. He says, I want to have this one, in other words, I want to have this one last sensation that I enjoy in this body before I leave it here, before I take off. And he said, she said he started rocking his chair, staring out the window, and at 10 o'clock, he was gone. Now see, he knew who he was. And this was not in charge. See, the body wasn't in charge. The current reality in the brain wasn't in charge. He says, I'm taking this. Now think about it. What does this body go to when it deteriorates? Dust? Amazing to me. Are you attached to dirt? You think that's what you are? Think about how silly that is. And you're just energy leaving this form. Oh boy, I wonder what's the next one. What's the next experience I'm going to get? What's the next ride I'm going to take? Are you following me? Okay, you can ask a question.
I guess I found it interesting.
This'll do it.
The dust thing gets me. Okay, I gotta know how the dust of the Bible comes about. Dust you come, dust you return.
Well, that's what you're talking about, your body.
It's kind of like we're a magnetic field, and when we're
Animating.
picking up
Yes,
the
exactly.
dust so you can see.
You're
our
animating.
body.
It's like putting on the dust. Yeah.
Okay,
And
Thank you.
then whenever our body is ready to leave this thing, we drop the dust,
Shut it off.
shed the clothes,
and then we
so
pick
that
up
we can
more dust
go.
to become another.
Yeah.
experience.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
But how do you pick up the
So
dust?
that is why your dust, your ashes, are not you.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's why
Thank
I don't
you.
want to be buried
I like that.
because I'm not there.
That's exactly right.
See.
At the cemetery yesterday, and every tombstone had flowers on top of it. And I told David, I said, oh my gosh, I mean, just think about this. And there are always cars there, people go there. I'm not But it's like,
What's just another?
do you not get there?
It's another defined experience.
Right.
Exactly.
See, but think about it. How many of us stood holding our parents' hands 4 and 5 years old at the grave of a relative?
Right.
So you got programmed to believe that so and so's name's on there. They're in that box. And this is where I'm taking you. And we've talked. I think how many of you were here when we listened to the Chaos